What if the world's most famous prince just found out his children aren't really his? The camera pans slowly across a dimly lit garden in Montecito. The air is still, the ocean hum barely audible in the distance. Prince Harry sits alone on a weathered wooden bench, head bowed, eyes red and swollen. In his hand, an old photograph, creased, faded, trembling between his fingers. The image shows a smiling family: Meghan, Harry, Archie, and Lilibet, all frozen in a moment of innocence. But tonight, that photo feels like a lie. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. A soft wind stirs the trees. The same garden that once hosted laughter and summer barbecues now echoes with silence. And in that silence, a truth has detonated, one that no royal crisis manager could ever prepare him for. Moments earlier, Meghan Markle had whispered words that ripped through the fabric of Harry's reality. Words that turned love into suspicion, fatherhood into doubt. They were alone. No aides, no staff, no cameras. Just two people, standing on opposite sides of a room that once felt like home. "You deserve to know," she said quietly. Her tone was strange, almost rehearsed. "It's time you finally know the truth about the children." At first, Harry thought she was joking. Meghan had always had a flair for drama, the kind that made even mundane moments sound like movie scenes. But this time, there was no smirk, no smoothed-over line. Just the cold, deliberate delivery of a secret she'd buried for years. The words hit him like a punch to the chest. His first instinct was disbelief, then anger, then something even worse, realization. Because deep down, in the darkest corners of his mind, he'd wondered. The timing of Archie's birth, the secrecy around the hospital, the unexplained gaps in public appearances, the endless rumors the palace refused to comment on. He'd buried those doubts under loyalty, under love. But tonight, they clawed their way back. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice cracking, barely above a whisper. Meghan looked at him, tears threatening but never falling. "I mean that the children might not be yours." The sound of glass shattered. His hand had knocked over a wine glass, spilling deep red liquid across the marble floor. For a second, it looked like blood. Harry's knees went weak. The world blurred. His chest tightened until breathing felt like punishment. "What do you mean they're not mine?" he shouted, the echo bouncing off the cold white walls. But Meghan didn't flinch. She stood still, arms crossed, jaw tense. Her silence was louder than any scream. And then, she said his name. "Marcus." Harry froze. The air left his lungs. Marcus Anderson, the man he'd seen in passing, smiling, confident, always hovering near Meghan's early life. The man she once called her closest friend. The man she'd never quite cut off. 1,000 images flooded his mind: red carpets, Toronto nights, whispered conversations that ended the moment he entered the room. He'd brushed it off before. Everyone has friends, he told himself. Everyone has a past. But this wasn't a rumor. This was confession. He stared at her, eyes wide. "Marcus Anderson? You're saying he's—" "I'm saying," Meghan interrupted, her voice trembling, "that before everything happened, before you and I became what we are, things were complicated. Choices were made." Choices. That word hung in the air like smoke. Harry couldn't move. His mind was split between two timelines, the one he'd lived and the one she'd just exposed. He thought of Archie's smile, how it never quite mirrored his own. He remembered the whispered comparisons online. He looks nothing like his father. The photos analyzed frame by frame, dismissed as cruel gossip. Now those voices came roaring back. But Meghan kept talking, her words now tumbling out in fragments. "It wasn't meant to go this far. Marcus was helping me. We thought it wouldn't matter once they what? Married? Became royals? Lied to the world?" Harry's voice broke. "You used me." Her eyes flickered with guilt, but only for a moment. "I didn't use you, Harry. I loved you. I still do. But you have to understand. None of this was supposed to happen like this." He turned away, pacing, hands gripping his hair. His breathing quickened, heart pounding. Every second stretched into eternity. How do you process betrayal when it's wrapped in the face of the person you swore to protect? Outside, rain began to fall. A slow drizzle turned into a storm. Lightning flashed through the glass doors, illuminating Meghan's pale face. The storm outside mirrored the one inside. Why now? Harry demanded, spinning to face her. Why tell me now? Meghan hesitated. Then, almost defiantly, she said, because the truth is coming out whether we like it or not. Those words were colder than the rain. The truth is coming out. Harry didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. Within days, whispers would become headlines. A single photograph would resurface online, and one name, Marcus Anderson, would ignite a scandal unlike anything the royal family had faced before. But on that night, it was still just two people in a house built on secrets. He tried to speak, but no words came. He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. The woman he'd given up everything for, the crown, his country, his brother, was now the woman unraveling his entire identity. The irony cut deep. The prince who'd fought to be a father was now being told he might not be one at all. He sat down again, the same photo still in his hand. The smiles on that paper now looked cruel. He studied Archie's eyes, Lilibet's curls, Meghan's perfect grin. Every detail stabbed at him. When had it all begun? Toronto? The suit set? The Soho House connections? And who exactly was Marcus Anderson to Meghan Markle? A friend? A mentor? Or something far more dangerous? Harry didn't yet realize that Marcus's name wasn't just a ghost from Meghan's past. It was a living thread connecting every unanswered question in their marriage. Marcus had been there before Harry. Marcus had seen things Harry never would. And Marcus had power, quiet, subtle, but deadly. The deeper Harry dug, the more he'd learned that Marcus wasn't just a bystander in Meghan's life. He was the architect. But that's the story the world wasn't supposed to hear. Because while the cameras showed a fairy tale, the truth was a deal. And deals, as Harry would soon discover, come with expiration dates. He would spend the next few days trying to reason with himself. Maybe Meghan exaggerated. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe she'd said it out of anger. But then, one evening, while alone in his study, Harry found something that made all his doubts collapse. A letter. Old, worn, tucked inside a children's book. It wasn't addressed to him. It wasn't even written by Meghan. The handwriting was unfamiliar, confident, masculine. The words were haunting. Our miracle is safe. Thank you for giving me this gift. And signed at the bottom, Marcus. Harry dropped the letter, his hands trembling. The walls seemed to close in. Could it be true? Was this the missing piece of the puzzle? The proof that Meghan's confession wasn't a moment of hysteria, but a carefully buried truth? The thought alone was unbearable. He thought of his mother, Diana, who'd once said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage." Now, decades later, her son faced the same cruel reality. Only this time, it wasn't infidelity, it was legacy, bloodline, identity. And as he sat there, staring at that letter, a single question echoed through his mind. Who am I, if I'm not their father? The lights flickered. The rain intensified. Somewhere deep inside the house, Meghan's voice carried faintly through the halls. Calm, controlled, already on the phone with someone. Harry listened. The words blurred, but one phrase stood out. He knows. A chill ran down his spine. It wasn't just betrayal, it was coordination. He realized then that this wasn't spontaneous. It was planned, timed, calculated, and it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because if Meghan had kept this secret for years, what else was she hiding? Who else knew? And why did she choose now to tell him? There were too many questions, and no one left to trust. That night, Harry didn't sleep. He sat in that same chair until dawn, watching the light creep through the curtains. The garden birds chirped as if mocking the silence that consumed him. Somewhere inside him, something broke. Not just his heart, but his faith. He'd left his family, his country, and his title for this woman. And now, she'd taken away the only thing he had left, certainty. When the morning came, Meghan was gone. The note she left behind was short, almost clinical. I'll be at the hotel. Don't call the press. No apology. No denial. Just distance. Harry folded the note, placed it beside the photograph, and whispered, "It's already too late." He didn't yet realize that the name Marcus Anderson would soon appear in every headline on the planet. That photos from 2016 would resurface. That whispers from palace insiders would confirm suspicions. That even Meghan's closest allies would begin to retreat. Because in every royal scandal, there's a moment when truth leaks faster than control, and this was that moment. But what came next would change everything. and no one saw it coming. It started with thunder. Not the kind that rolls softly across the sky. This was the kind that cracks open the world. Harry stood by the window, staring out at the rain slicing through the night. The house was silent, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that hums right before everything collapses. Inside the Montecito mansion, a single light glowed in the kitchen. The wine bottle was half empty, 2 glasses on the marble counter. Dinner had ended hours ago. Meghan was upstairs, pacing. Harry could hear her heels clicking against the hardwood. That rhythm, sharp, quick, relentless, sounded like a countdown. He didn't know it yet, but tonight would be the last night he'd ever think of his family as his own. When she finally came down, she didn't look at him. Her phone was still in her hand, her eyes unreadable. She poured another glass of wine, then sat across from him. For a long moment, neither spoke. "Are you going to tell me what's going on?" Harry finally said. Meghan didn't answer. She swirled her wine, watching it like she could see her reflection in it. Harry leaned forward. "You said we needed to talk. So talk." She exhaled slowly. "You're not going to like it." He laughed, but it wasn't real. "That's a hell of a way to start." Her voice dropped lower. "I've been keeping something from you. Something big. Something I never meant to tell you this way." Harry's pulse quickened. He'd heard those words before. During interviews, arguments, tabloid scandals. But never like this. There was no performance in her tone. No PR polish. "What is it?" he asked, his voice barely steady. Meghan looked up. For the first time, he saw fear in her eyes. "It's about the children." That one word, children, froze him. He thought maybe something had happened to Archie or Lilibet. An accident, an illness, anything but this. "What about them?" he said quickly. She swallowed. They're not entirely yours." The world tilted. "Not entirely mine." His voice cracked. "What does that even mean?" Meghan's lips trembled. "You don't understand. Before everything, before London, before the engagement, I was working through things. Marcus helped me." Harry stood so fast the chair screeched. "Marcus? Marcus Anderson? You're talking about him again?" She nodded. "Yes, him." He slammed his hand on the counter. "Why? What does he have to do with my children?" Her eyes flicked to his hand. Steady, no flinch, just calm, calculated silence. Then, almost like she was reading from a script, she said, "Because he's part of them." The words echoed. They didn't even make sense. But something in his chest told him they were true. He stepped back, shaking his head. "You're insane." No, that's impossible." "You're saying Marcus." "I'm saying," Meghan cut in sharply, "that when I thought things would never work out with you, Marcus was there. I didn't think we'd have this life. I didn't think. You didn't think I'd find out?" Harry's voice rose. "You didn't think it mattered?" The tension snapped. Rain pounded harder outside, rattling against the glass doors. She stood too, tears streaking down her face now. "Don't make me the villain here, Harry. You knew what you were walking into when you married me. I wasn't perfect. You knew about Marcus. Everyone knew." He pointed toward the door. "Everyone knew except me." The words hit her, but she didn't apologize. She just stared at him, her silence heavy, almost defiant. "Do you love him?" Harry asked. The question came out quieter, almost broken. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. That was enough of an answer. He turned away, gripping the back of the couch. His shoulders shook. "You said we were a team. You said everything we built was real." "It was," she said softly. "It still is." He turned back, eyes blazing. "Then how could you do this to me?" She took a step closer, voice trembling. "Because I was scared, Harry. I didn't know if you'd stay. You were already halfway out of the royal family, fighting your brother, fighting your father. I needed to protect myself." He stared at her like she was a stranger. "You protected yourself by lying to me?" "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she said again. "It was never meant to hurt you." He laughed bitterly. "Never meant to hurt me? You just told me I might not be the father of my own children." She looked down. "It's complicated." "Then make it simple," he said coldly. And she did, with one sentence. "Marcus and I made a decision, years ago, before you and I got married. There were procedures, medical things. He helped me." The words hung in the air like a loaded gun. Harry stared at her. "Procedures?" She nodded, her hands shaking now. "I didn't think it would matter once we became a family." He blinked, trying to comprehend. "You're saying Marcus is biologically connected to the children?" Meghan closed her eyes. In a way, yes. The storm outside roared. Lightning lit the room in harsh flashes. Harry's breath came in short gasps. You're telling me Marcus Anderson, the man you said was just a friend, might be the father of my children? Her tears finally fell. I didn't want to tell you. I never wanted you to look at me like this. Like what? He shouted. Like I don't even know who you are? She stepped forward. Harry, don't. He raised his hand. Don't touch me. Don't say my name. The glass door behind him rattled again as thunder crashed. He looked out at the storm, wishing it would drown everything out. But he couldn't unhear it. He couldn't unsee her face. Finally, he turned back. How long have you been lying to me? Meghan's voice broke. Since before the wedding. It felt like a knife twisting in his chest. Every vow, every promise, every look of love under the St. George's Chapel roof, all suddenly fake. She whispered, I was trying to protect them. To protect all of us. He laughed bitterly. Protect? You've destroyed us. A long silence followed. The only sound was the rain hammering the glass. Meghan wiped her tears and whispered, He knows, Harry. Marcus knows too. That stopped him. What did you just say? I said he knows. He's known all along. Harry's face went pale. You told him? She hesitated. He deserved to know. Deserved to know? Harry repeated, his voice shaking. And I didn't. She took another step closer. I didn't want to lose you. You already have. The air between them went cold. For a moment, neither moved. Then Meghan turned and walked toward the stairs, her heels echoing against the floor like punctuation marks on a sentence that would never be finished. Harry sank into the nearest chair, his body trembling. The glass of wine on the counter sat untouched. His reflection stared back at him from the window. The face of a man betrayed by the only person he thought he could trust. Outside, lightning illuminated the garden, the same spot where they'd once taken family photos, smiling, carefree. Now it looked like a graveyard of memories. He whispered to himself, why him? He needed an answer. He needed to understand how Marcus Anderson, the man Meghan swore was nothing but a friend, had become the ghost haunting his children's faces. But there were no answers tonight. Only questions. He stayed there until dawn, staring out the window, trying to replay every conversation he'd ever had with Meghan, every story that didn't quite add up. The dinner parties, the unplanned trips, the whispered phone calls she took outside. It all made sense now, too much sense. The betrayal wasn't new. It had roots, deep ones. And as the morning light began to spill across the horizon, Harry made a silent vow. He would find the truth, no matter how painful it was. Because love could survive lies, but fatherhood couldn't survive doubt. He didn't yet know that this confession was only the surface. Beneath it was a history of secrecy, carefully managed by people who knew far more than he did. Marcus wasn't just a name from Meghan's past. He was part of the structure that built her present, the silent benefactor, the man behind the scenes. But how did they meet? Why did she trust him more than her own husband? And what exactly happened before the royal fairy tale began? The storm outside eased, leaving behind the heavy scent of wet earth. Meghan's voice echoed faintly from upstairs, calm, almost detached, speaking on the phone again. Harry closed his eyes. Every instinct screamed that this wasn't the end of the conversation. It was the beginning of something far darker. And deep down, one thought haunted him more than any other. If Meghan had kept this secret for so long, what else was she capable of hiding? Because in the royal world, lies don't just destroy love. They rewrite bloodlines. And what Harry would soon discover about Marcus Anderson would shake not just his marriage, but the entire foundation of who he believed he was. What came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Who exactly is Marcus Anderson? It's a question that's haunted Prince Harry ever since that stormy night in Montecito. A name that used to mean nothing suddenly meant everything. Because Marcus wasn't just a face in Meghan's past. He was the ghost in every room Harry had never known was haunted. Let's go back. Toronto, 2014. Long before royal headlines, long before castles and titles, Meghan Markle was still a working actress on Suits. Her smile was already famous on set, her charm magnetic. But behind the confidence was a woman calculating her next move. She'd just ended a relationship, had a modest apartment, and spent nights at local events trying to connect with people who mattered. Enter Marcus Anderson. At first glance, Marcus was everything Meghan admired: sophisticated, worldly, and most importantly, connected. He wasn't an actor or director. He was what insiders call a social architect. The man who could get you into any room, introduce you to anyone. He knew where influence was born and how to sell access to it. Marcus was one of the senior directors at Soho House, the exclusive members-only club that blended Hollywood luxury with political power. Everyone who was anyone in Toronto passed through its doors, and Marcus held the keys. For Meghan, meeting Marcus was like discovering the back door to the life she wanted. Friends remember their first meeting vividly. It was during a charity gala, when Marcus had been organizing VIP tables for donors and stars. Meghan arrived wearing a simple black dress, trying not to look desperate for attention. But Marcus saw her immediately, not because she was famous, but because she was ambitious. He introduced himself with a grin and said, "You're in the wrong seat." She laughed nervously. "Why is that?" "Because the people who matter aren't sitting there." He moved her to the center table, next to executives, producers, and influencers. That night changed her trajectory forever. From that moment, Marcus became her guide, mentor, confidant. Some say more. Soon, they were inseparable. She wasn't just a Suits actress anymore. She was part of Marcus's circle, the one that orbited the worlds of luxury, media, and quiet influence. He introduced her to high society events in New York. He coached her on posture, tone, presentation. "Never beg for a seat," he told her. "Make them beg for yours." Sound familiar? It should. It became the philosophy Meghan carried into every room she'd enter afterward, including the one that held the world's most eligible prince. But here's what makes it eerie. Almost every key event in Meghan's rise connects back to Marcus. When Meghan launched her now-defunct lifestyle blog The Tig, guess who helped secure her sponsorships? Marcus. When she needed photographers, stylists, and PR contacts, guess who arranged introductions? Marcus. And when Meghan received her first invitation to a charity polo event where British royals occasionally appeared, guess who made the call? Marcus Anderson. Coincidence? Or orchestration? Harry never noticed Marcus at first. Why would he? Meghan had explained him away early. An old friend, my rock, my sounding board. But those who knew them say Marcus's friendship with Meghan was different. Intense. Sometimes even possessive. He'd accompany her to private dinners, sit beside her during events, often standing just a little too close. There were whispers, of course. Even some of her Suits co-stars found the dynamic unsettling. But Meghan dismissed it. "He's family," she'd say with that practiced smile. Family. Years later, that word would come back to haunt Harry. Because Marcus wasn't the kind of man who stayed in the background out of affection. He stayed there because that's where real control lives. When Meghan first started dating Prince Harry in 2016, very few people in her circle knew. But Marcus did. In fact, he was one of the first to meet Harry in secret. It was during a quiet dinner at a private residence in Toronto. Meghan had insisted Marcus come. For support, she'd said. Harry didn't think much of it then, though he did find it strange how comfortable Marcus was around her. At one point, Marcus even joked, "Don't worry, I trained her well." Harry laughed politely. Now that line feels sinister. In hindsight, everything about Marcus's involvement feels like prelude, a setup. He was always there, always advising, always arranging. When the press first broke the story of Harry and Meghan's relationship, Marcus was reportedly one of the few who handled media inquiries on Meghan's behalf. He coordinated statements, fielded requests, and even liaised with palace aides. How does a Soho House executive suddenly become a shadow press manager for a royal girlfriend? Because Marcus had influence. And influence is power. When Meghan and Harry attended their first public event together at the Invictus Games in Toronto, cameras captured something odd. Marcus sitting just a few rows behind them, wearing dark glasses, watching. Not part of the royal circle, not media, just watching. At the time, it meant nothing. Now it looks like surveillance. People close to Meghan say Marcus was her crisis fixer. Whenever something risked derailing her image, Marcus handled it quietly. He had the network, the money, the experience. But over time, Harry began to feel uneasy. Meghan would take late-night calls from Marcus, often stepping out of the room. Whenever Harry asked, she'd brush it off. He's just helping with logistics. Logistics became a word Harry learned to hate. By the time the couple married in 2018, Marcus had already been deeply embedded in Meghan's world. He attended the wedding. He had VIP access. He was photographed chatting with celebrities and royals alike. But the strangest part? No one in the royal family actually knew who he was. To them, Marcus was just another guest. To Meghan, he was something else entirely. Some insiders claim that Marcus's role went far beyond friendship. They say he was Meghan's silent partner. Emotionally, financially, perhaps even biologically. Because around the time Meghan and Harry were trying to conceive Archie, there were rumors she'd been consulting specialists in Los Angeles and Toronto, clinics known for using donor programs. Marcus was reportedly seen accompanying her to at least one of those appointments. When asked, Meghan said it was just a wellness check. But documents and old photos tell a different story. One of quiet visits, pseudonyms, and payments that didn't quite match the couple's official timeline. Harry never saw those records until years later. But the more he learned, the clearer it became that Marcus was never gone, only hidden. It wasn't just about love or betrayal. It was about planning, power, ownership of a narrative. Because if Marcus was indeed the biological father of Harry's children, that meant the entire royal lineage had been compromised, not by scandal, but by science. And Meghan knew exactly what she was doing. She'd once told a friend, "The royal world only values bloodlines. So I'll make sure mine runs through theirs." Was it metaphor? Or confession? Harry might never know. But here's where things get darker. After the couple moved to California, Marcus's name quietly disappeared from Meghan's public life. No more social posts, no sightings, no interviews. But behind the scenes, his presence never really vanished. Anonymous reports claimed Marcus visited their Montecito home multiple times under the guise of business meetings. A few neighbors even spotted his car. Meghan brushed off the sightings as tabloid fabrication. But Harry noticed, and he remembered. He started connecting the dots. Marcus's involvement in the early years. His proximity during pregnancies. His name appearing in archived email threads from Meghan's old accounts. The picture that emerged was horrifying. Marcus wasn't a ghost. He was the architect of her second life. And now, that life was colliding with Harry's. The irony? Marcus and Harry weren't so different in some ways. Both were born into worlds where power meant everything. Both sought meaning beyond money and fame. Both thought they understood Meghan. Only one of them was wrong. Because Marcus didn't love Meghan the way Harry did. He managed her, shaped her, protected her when it benefited him. And when Harry came along, Marcus didn't disappear. He adapted. He became the invisible third person in their marriage, the silent force shaping decisions. Every strategic PR move, every friendship Meghan made in Hollywood, every narrative she controlled, Marcus's fingerprints were there. The question now was, if Marcus truly believed he was the father of those children, what else had he been protecting all along? And why did Meghan wait until now to tell Harry the truth? That night in Montecito wasn't an accident. It was a trigger. A prelude to something much larger. Because Marcus Anderson was no longer hiding. He was preparing to speak. Somewhere in Los Angeles, a journalist had received a message from an anonymous source, a male voice claiming to have proof of paternity hidden for years. That message would soon go public. And when it did, the world would see Marcus not just as Meghan's mysterious friend, but as the man who may hold the keys to the royal bloodline itself. And Harry? He was about to learn that truth doesn't just destroy marriages, it destroys legacies. Because what came next would rip open secrets the palace had buried for decades. And the first clue was a single photograph. It was hidden in plain sight. The photo that would unravel everything sat quietly in an old storage box in Harry's Montecito study. To anyone else, it was just another tabloid printout from Meghan's Suits days, one of dozens he'd kept from before their engagement. But this one felt different. It started innocently. Harry was cleaning, or at least pretending to. Anything to distract himself from the suffocating silence that had filled the house since that stormy confession night. Meghan had moved to a nearby hotel for space. The kids were with staff. The house that once rang with laughter was now just echoing with ghosts. He opened the old wooden trunk that held his pre-California memories, photo albums, handwritten notes from Diana, medals, old headlines. He wanted to remind himself who he was before all this. Before Meghan's confession shattered the ground beneath him. And that's when he saw it. A manila folder marked Toronto. Inside, a series of photographs from Meghan's suit's years. Some paparazzi shots, some candid, a few publicity stills. He flipped through absently, his mind elsewhere, until one image made his heart stop cold. It was a photograph of Meghan, wearing an oversized beige coat, dark glasses, her head tilted down as she hurried into a small medical clinic on Queen Street West. The date scribbled on the back, June 2016. And right beside her, walking close enough to touch her shoulder, was Marcus Anderson. Harry's breath caught. June 2016. That was the exact month Meghan told him she was in London visiting friends. The same week she'd said she needed a break from the spotlight. But here she was, in Toronto, entering a clinic with the very man she'd confessed was connected to their children. He stared at the photo for a long time, as if it might change if he blinked enough. But the truth stayed still. The familiarity of their body language, the way Marcus's hand hovered protectively at her back, the faint smile she gave him, all of it screamed intimacy. And the clinic, it wasn't just any clinic. It was one Harry recognized. He'd seen its name mentioned before in certain circles. A private fertility facility known for donor programs, embryo storage, and, most controversially, non-disclosure arrangements. He flipped the photo over again, looking for context, for denial, for anything that could make sense. But there it was, in black ink. June 14, 2016, wellness visit. Who wrote this? He whispered to himself. The handwriting was Meghan's. That detail hit him harder than anything else. She hadn't even hidden it well, as if the truth was buried not out of fear, but arrogance. He sank back in his chair, the photo shaking in his hand. All those years she'd told him, "I've always been honest with you." All those nights, she'd sworn that Marcus was nothing more than a friend. Lies, all of it. He remembered asking her once, early in their relationship, "Was there ever anything between you two?" She had smiled and said, "Don't be silly. Marcus is like a brother." But the photo didn't show siblings. It showed something else, something secret, something layered. Harry pulled out his phone, searching for the clinic's name online. The website still existed, sleek, minimal, filled with words like confidentiality, discretion, advanced genetic options. He scrolled, his hands trembling. One section caught his eye. Exclusive privacy for high-profile clients. Custom arrangements available upon request. He felt sick. He remembered every detail of Meghan's pregnancy stories. How she'd refused to name the hospital where Archie was born. How she'd insisted on a private medical team. How even palace officials couldn't verify the timeline. It had always seemed strange, but now, it was horrifyingly clear. The narrative had been built on control. Every photo, every statement, every interview, orchestrated. He placed the picture flat on the table and stared at Marcus's face. That self-assured grin, the casual elegance. He'd always carried himself like someone who knew more than he should. And he did. This wasn't just a random moment. This was evidence. Proof of a bond that existed long before Harry ever entered Meghan's life. For a second, Harry considered destroying it, burning it, pretending it didn't exist. Because once he admitted it was real, there was no going back. But his curiosity, his need for truth, overpowered his pain. He picked up the phone and dialed an old contact from his army days, a man who'd since moved into private security and investigations. Someone Harry could still trust. "Ben? It's me. I need a background check. Quiet. No one can know." "Who's the target?" Harry hesitated. "A man named Marcus Anderson." There was a pause on the line. "Soho House Marcus?" Harry froze. "You know him?" "Everyone in London knows him, mate. He's the guy behind the curtain. You don't get into elite circles without crossing his path." "What?" Harry's grip tightened. "Just find everything you can." He hung up before Ben could ask questions. The next few days were a blur. Meghan hadn't come home. Harry avoided calls from palace contacts, avoided the press, avoided even his reflection. He was consumed by one thought, the photo. When Ben finally called back, his voice was lower, cautious. "Harry, you need to listen carefully. Go on. There's a lot of smoke around this Marcus fellow. Officially, he's a lifestyle executive, works for Soho House, manages memberships, celebrity relations, that kind of thing. But off the books, he's more than that. Meaning he's been a fixer for years. Not illegal, just discreet. Connects people, hides others. He's got ties in entertainment, politics, even finance. And get this, he's listed as a private client liaison for that clinic in your photo. Harry's stomach twisted. He works there? No, but he facilitates clients. The rich and famous. Confidential arrangements, alternative parenthood, that sort of thing. The line went quiet. Harry whispered, "So you're saying?" "I'm saying if he was with Meghan there, it wasn't for a checkup." Harry's hand went numb. He dropped the phone. The sound echoed through the empty room. The truth was now too close to deny. He went back to the photo, staring at it again. It wasn't just a memory, it was a map. Every hidden detail suddenly mattered. The ring on Marcus's finger. The clinic's reflection in the window. Even the car parked out front. A black Mercedes with tinted windows, one Meghan used frequently during that time. He remembered Meghan once saying, "Toronto was where everything changed for me." He had thought she meant suits, her fame, her independence. Now he knew she'd meant something else entirely. He whispered to himself, she wasn't visiting friends. She was making arrangements. The thought was unbearable. And then, something even stranger. On the back of the next photo in the stack, in the same handwriting, were two words, "Our future." He dropped it like it burned him. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat by the fire, the photo spread out before him, and tried to piece together the timeline. June 2016, Meghan in Toronto with Marcus. July 2016, Meghan and Harry's first public flirtations begin. By August, the first reports of their whirlwind romance. By November, the palace confirms their relationship. Everything fit too perfectly, too conveniently. It wasn't a coincidence. It was choreography. And the man who had choreographed it was Marcus Anderson. Harry ran a hand through his hair, frustration boiling over. He slammed the folder shut and threw it across the room. But the sound wasn't enough. The rage needed an outlet. He picked up his phone and typed a message to Meghan. "Explain this." He attached the photo. No context, no greeting, just proof. The message showed delivered, then silence. 10 minutes passed. 20, 30, nothing. Finally, at 1:14 a.m., his phone buzzed. Her reply was short. "It's not what it looks like." Harry stared at the screen, shaking his head. "It's exactly what it looks like," he muttered. He typed back. "You lied about being in London. You lied about Marcus. What else have you lied about?" No response. He dropped the phone onto the couch and pressed his palms against his eyes, trying to block out the image that wouldn't leave his mind. Meghan's coat, Marcus's shadow, that clinic door swinging open. The truth was finally catching up. He didn't know it yet, but this photo wouldn't just change how he saw his marriage. It would trigger a series of events that would drag the royal institution itself into chaos. Because when secrets start unraveling in the royal family, they never stop at one. And soon, someone outside that Montecito home, someone who shouldn't have known, would get their hands on the same photograph. And that person would leak it. The world would see it. The timeline would collapse. And the narrative that Meghan and Harry had built would come crashing down, one frame at a time. But before the world saw it, one more clue was waiting. Hidden in a locked box Meghan thought Harry would never find. And inside that box was the letter that would confirm everything. Sometimes the truth doesn't scream. It whispers, from inside drawers you were never meant to open. It was a quiet morning in Montecito when Harry stumbled upon the secret that would confirm everything he feared. The storm had passed days ago, but the air still felt heavy, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Meghan was still gone. The staff moved like ghosts, careful not to make eye contact. Every sound felt louder in her absence. Harry hadn't slept properly in a week. The photo of Meghan and Marcus at that Toronto clinic haunted him like a living thing. He kept it in his pocket, pulling it out at night as though the image might suddenly confess. But it stayed silent, accusing him instead. That morning, desperate for distraction, he found himself in the walk-in closet of their bedroom, a place he rarely entered. The space smelled like her perfume, that expensive mix of jasmine and citrus. Her clothes hung neatly in color order, untouched since she'd left. And then, behind a row of neatly folded sweaters, he saw something odd, a small wooden box. It was polished, ornate, and locked with a delicate gold clasp. The kind of box that didn't belong in a wardrobe. It looked personal, private. He hesitated. Every moral instinct told him not to open it. But another voice, the one that had been growing louder since that stormy night, whispered back, She's been lying to you for years. Why stop now? He picked it up, heart pounding. The box was heavier than it looked. There was no key in sight, but Harry had been in the army. Locks didn't intimidate him. He took a small pin from a drawer, worked it into the clasp, and with a soft click, it opened. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied neatly with a silk ribbon. Some were in envelopes, others loose. The handwriting wasn't hers. It was masculine, deliberate, confident. He picked one at random and unfolded it. The first line made his stomach twist. My dearest M, our miracle is safe. Thank you for giving me this gift. Signed M.A. Marcus Anderson. Harry dropped the letter. His fingers trembled. He felt the blood drain from his face. He grabbed another one, then another, each one more intimate than the last. They spoke of shared secrets, coded references to the agreement, and cryptic mentions of our little family. The words blurred together as he read them. Our little family. He whispered it aloud, the words breaking in his throat. How could she? Every instinct told him to stop reading, but curiosity, or maybe pain, kept pulling him forward. Another letter, dated early 2017, read, M, everything is in motion. They'll never question it. The world will see what we built and believe it's theirs. You've always been the best at becoming what they need you to be. He could almost hear Marcus's voice, charming, manipulative, certain. And there it was, the confirmation he dreaded. The procedure went perfectly. The clinic followed protocol. No trace, no leak. Our miracle will live the life they were meant for. Harry stared at those words until they stopped making sense. The procedure. No trace, no leak. It wasn't a love affair. It was a plan. He sat down on the floor, the letters scattered around him. His chest felt tight, his vision blurred with tears he didn't want to shed. This wasn't just betrayal, it was conspiracy. He'd been the face of a lie, the final piece in a performance rehearsed long before he ever arrived. He looked at the stack of letters again and noticed one different from the rest. Smaller, handwritten in Meghan's unmistakable looping script. The envelope was addressed simply to M. He opened it carefully, half hoping it would deny everything, explain it away. Instead, it only deepened the wound. My darling M, it began. No one will ever know. You promised me that. I can't risk losing him, not now. He's already halfway gone from them, and they need a symbol, not a scandal. You've given me that. You've given us that. She continued, her tone more desperate. If anyone ever finds out, everything collapses. I can't let him, or the world, see how much of this was built on what we did. You're the reason it worked. You're the reason they'll never doubt it. Harry's breath came in sharp bursts. Halfway gone from them. She meant the royal family. She'd written this while he was still struggling with his decision to leave. While he was fighting the press, the palace, his own bloodline. She was writing love letters to the man who might actually share her children's DNA. He picked up the letter again, reading the last line. Our secret lives between worlds. Yours, mine, and theirs. That's the beauty of it. They'll never know where the truth ends and the story begins. That line cut deeper than any knife. It wasn't just deceit. It was performance. He gathered the letters back into the box and sat there for a long time, shaking. His life, his marriage, his very identity, all built on a story written by someone else. When Meghan returned that evening, the air was electric. She walked in quietly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Harry was waiting in the living room, the box open in front of him. She froze. What is that? He didn't speak at first. He just stared at her, eyes hollow, voice steady. You tell me. Her jaw clenched. You went through my things. You went through my life, he snapped, slamming his hand against the box. You lied about everything. The clinic, Marcus, the children. And now this. Letters? Private love notes? What else are you hiding from me? Meghan's face went pale. You weren't supposed to find those. He laughed bitterly. I wasn't supposed to find the truth, you mean? She shook her head, tears forming. You don't understand. Then make me understand. His voice cracked. Explain how these letters aren't proof that everything between us was fake. She took a step forward, voice trembling. It wasn't fake. I love you, Harry. I always have. He glared at her. Then what is this? He held up the letter signed M.A. Her silence said everything. He pressed on, his tone colder now. You said you wanted to protect the children. Protect them from what? Me? The truth? The royal family. Meghan wiped her tears and whispered, "From the consequences." "Consequences of what?" "Of choices I made before you." He stepped closer. "And what about the choices you made with me? Was that real?" She met his gaze, her voice barely a whisper. "Parts of it." That sentence shattered him. He turned away, pacing. "Parts of it? Do you even hear yourself? You turned my life into one of your PR scripts." Her tone sharpened. "You think you were innocent in this? You used me too, Harry. You needed to escape that family, that prison of a crown, and I was your ticket out. Don't act like I was the only one playing a role." He stopped, staring at her in disbelief. "You think this is about freedom? This is about blood, Meghan. About my children. Our children. They're still yours," she said softly. "In every way that matters." "In every way that matters?" he repeated, incredulous. "You think love erases genetics? You think loyalty covers lies?" She turned away, clutching the edge of the table. "You're not seeing the bigger picture." He let out a broken laugh. "No, I think I'm finally seeing it for the first time." Silence filled the room. Then, in a low, cold voice, he asked the question that had been burning in him since that night. "Did Marcus know I'd find out?" Meghan hesitated. Eventually, he felt the floor drop out beneath him. "You mean he expected this?" She nodded slowly. "He said one day you'd have to know. That you deserve the truth." Harry's voice shook. "You mean he planned this? You both did?" "No," she said quickly. "Not like that. He wanted to protect me. He knew how the world would react if they found out your husband wasn't the father of your children." He interrupted. Her silence was answer enough. He took a deep breath, his hands trembling. "You've destroyed me, Meghan." She stepped toward him, her face softening. "Harry, please." He raised a hand. "Don't. Not another word." She froze in place, tears streaming down her face. He turned and walked toward the door, pausing for a moment before looking back. "You wanted control, Meghan. You wanted power. Well, you've got it. But when the world finds out what you've done, you'll lose the one thing you never thought you would, me." And with that, he left the room. Meghan stood there alone, shaking, the open box still on the table. The letters fluttered as a breeze moved through the open window, scattering them across the floor like falling confessions. She picked one up, the ink smudged from tears, and whispered, "It was supposed to be our miracle." Outside, Harry stood in the garden, staring up at the dark sky. He wanted to scream, to break something, to disappear. But instead, he closed his eyes and thought of his mother, the woman who'd endured betrayal under the same spotlight. He could almost hear her voice. "The truth always comes out, darling. The only question is when." And deep down, Harry knew the world was about to learn everything. Because one of those letters wasn't just a private confession. It was evidence. And soon, it would land in the hands of someone who would make sure the truth went public. But who sent it, and why, would shock everyone. For years, Marcus Anderson said nothing. Not a word. Not a denial. Not a confession. Just silence. The kind that makes people talk louder in the gaps it leaves behind. But silence has an expiration date. And when it broke, it didn't just make noise, it detonated. It began on a Thursday morning in Los Angeles. The air was thick with gossip. Meghan had been spotted leaving her Montecito home alone, sunglasses on, lips tight. The tabloids had already begun circling, smelling something raw in the air, the same way vultures smell a wound. Meanwhile, Prince Harry had vanished from sight. No public outings, no paparazzi photos, no Instagram leaks. Just rumors of him staying at a friend's ranch, off the grid, regrouping. Then came the post. It was short, cryptic, and devastating. On a private social media account linked to Marcus Anderson, the man who'd been silent through every rumor, every scandal, every denial, a new audio clip appeared. It lasted just 56 seconds. The caption read, "There's more truth in silence than in denial." In the recording, Marcus's smooth Canadian accent carried a strange mix of regret and arrogance. "I never meant for it to get this far," he began. "We all made choices. Some out of love, some out of fear. But I've always loved them as my own. Always." There was a pause, the sound of him breathing heavily, almost emotional. "I kept my promise. I stayed quiet. But when people rewrite history, sometimes you have to remind them who held the pen." Then the clip ended. No names. No details. No direct admissions. But it didn't matter. The world connected the dots instantly. Within an hour, The post had been screenshotted and shared across every major platform. The hashtags trended. Hashtag Marcus speaks. Hashtag royal scandal. Hashtag the other father. And by noon, news outlets from London to Los Angeles were playing the clip on repeat, dissecting every word, every breath. Was Marcus implying he was the biological father of Harry and Meghan's children? Or was he speaking metaphorically? Claiming emotional fatherhood? No one knew for sure. But speculation didn't need evidence. It just needed volume. By sunset, the palace was in chaos. Officially, the royal press office said nothing. Unofficially, insiders whispered that King Charles had demanded immediate clarification. One aide was overheard saying, "This is worse than the Oprah interview. This is bloodline territory." Meanwhile, Harry listened to that recording on loop. Alone, over and over. Each word hit him like a hammer. "I've always loved them as my own." He couldn't escape that sentence. It echoed through the walls, followed him into every room. He called Meghan. No answer. He called again. Voicemail. When she finally texted back, all she wrote was, "Don't engage. Don't engage." That was always her rule. Silence, control, manipulation. But this wasn't about optics anymore. This was about truth. Harry threw his phone down and left the house. He didn't know where he was driving, only that he needed answers. He drove north, the California coast flashing past, his mind a storm of betrayal and disbelief. Eventually, he found himself in Los Angeles, parked outside a luxury hotel in Beverly Hills. Marcus Anderson was there. Harry had found out through a source. Marcus was scheduled to attend a private industry mixer. It wasn't a royal event, but it might as well have been. Every Hollywood insider, influencer, and journalist in the city was talking about him. Harry waited in the car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. And then he saw him. Marcus emerged from the hotel, calm, composed, wearing a navy suit, smiling like a man who hadn't just thrown a grenade into the royal family. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but Marcus ignored them all, slipping into a black SUV. Harry's heart pounded. Without thinking, he started the car and followed. They drove for miles, through winding roads and city lights, until Marcus's car stopped at a gated property in the hills. The gates closed behind him, but Harry didn't hesitate. He parked outside, got out, and walked straight to the intercom. He pressed the button. "Marcus, it's Harry." There was a pause. Then a familiar voice crackled through. "Harry, I was wondering when you'd show up." "Open the gate," Harry said. "I think that's a bad idea," Marcus replied calmly. Harry's jaw clenched. "Open it, or I swear I'll climb over." A moment later, the gate clicked. When Harry stepped inside, Marcus was waiting at the front door, glass of whiskey in hand. He looked exactly as Harry remembered. Perfectly tailored, perfectly groomed, perfectly smug. "Come in," Marcus said. Harry didn't move. "I want answers. You'll have to be specific." "Don't play games with me," Harry snapped. "You posted that clip. You know what it implies." Marcus took a sip of his drink. "I didn't imply anything. People hear what they want to hear." "Stop lying," Harry shouted. "You said you love them as your own. What does that mean?" Marcus studied him for a long moment, then said quietly, "You already know." Harry's fists tightened. "Say it." Marcus set his glass down, his expression unreadable. "You really want the truth?" "Yes," Harry growled. Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping low. "Then here it is. Those children wouldn't exist without me." The words hit Harry like a physical blow. He staggered back, shaking his head. No, that's not true." Marcus shrugged. "Believe what you want. But you've seen the letters. You've seen the photo. You know how it started. You manipulated her," Harry said through clenched teeth. "You used her." Marcus smiled faintly. "Did I? Or did we use each other?" "Meghan knew what she wanted. I just helped her get it." "By lying to me?" "By lying to the entire world." Marcus tilted his head. "Lying is such a harsh word. Let's call it creative control." Harry's anger boiled over. "You think this is a joke? You think it's funny that you've destroyed lives?" Marcus's voice softened. "You're angry because deep down, you know she needed me in a way she never needed you." That was it. Harry lunged. He grabbed Marcus by the collar, slamming him against the wall. "Say that again." Marcus didn't flinch. He just looked at him. Calm, almost pitying. "I loved her before you did, Harry. And I gave her something you never could, security." Harry's grip tightened. Security? You call this security? Marcus met his eyes. She was terrified. Of the royals. Of losing control. Of being disposable. She came to me because I could make her untouchable. And for a while, it worked. Harry released him and stepped back, disgusted. You're sick. Marcus straightened his jacket, his calm returning. You should be thanking me. You wouldn't have the family you do without my involvement. Harry's voice broke. They're not your family. Marcus sighed. Maybe not legally. But blood doesn't lie. The words hung heavy in the air. Harry turned to leave, his hands shaking. You'll regret this. Marcus called after him. You already do. That night, Harry drove back to Montecito in silence. The road stretched endlessly ahead, the rain starting to fall again. Every word Marcus said played in his head like a broken record. I gave her something you never could. Blood doesn't lie. He reached home just before dawn, exhausted, drained, but more determined than ever. He wasn't going to let Marcus rewrite his life. Not without proof. He sat at his desk, pulled out his laptop, and typed a name into a private email. The only person he trusted left in that world. Need DNA confirmation. Quietly, he hit send. The truth would come, one way or another. But before the results arrived, a journalist halfway across the world would receive a mysterious envelope. Inside it, a single-page medical report and a note that said, they all deserve to know. And when that story broke, the fallout would reach not just California, but Buckingham Palace itself. Because the world was about to see what happens when silence turns into confession. And Marcus Anderson was just getting started. It came in a plain envelope. No name. No return address. Just one word written in black ink across the front. Private. Harry found it waiting on the doorstep early one morning, nestled between a stack of dull mail, charity flyers, bills, an invitation from some Montecito neighbor he didn't care about anymore. But that single word, private, cut through everything. He turned it over in his hands, feeling the weight. Not heavy, not light, just deliberate. Like it knew what it carried. He took it inside, shut the door, and sat at the kitchen counter. The sunlight poured through the glass, soft and golden, mocking the storm that lived inside him. He hesitated before opening it. Something about the neatness of it felt wrong. Too clean. Too quiet. Finally, he slid a knife under the seal and pulled out a single sheet of paper, folded twice. His heart began to hammer even before he unfolded it. When he did, the first line nearly made him drop it. Paternal match. Inconclusive. His breath caught. His pulse quickened. He read the next few lines over and over, trying to make sense of them. The report was clinical, detached, the kind of language that stripped emotion away and left only cold, merciless facts. DNA sample of subject A, H, Mountbatten, Windsor, compared to subjects B and C. Results indicate non-paternity probability exceeding 97.5%. He froze. Subjects B and C. Archie and Lilibet. He reread it. Once. Twice. 10 times. Each word felt like a hammer. Non-paternity probability exceeding 97.5%. His entire body went cold. He pressed his hand to his chest, feeling the thump of his heart. No, he whispered. No, no, no. His mind raced back to the last time he'd seen Marcus. That smug smirk, that calm certainty. Blood doesn't lie. Harry slammed the paper down on the counter. It slid across the surface and fluttered to the floor. He bent over, hands on his knees, trying to breathe. He wanted to scream. He wanted to throw the entire kitchen into the pool. But he couldn't move. He stared at the paper again, lying half-folded on the tile. A wave of nausea hit him. Then something else caught his eye, a small stamp at the bottom corner. A seal. Not a hospital logo. Not a clinic brand. Something far worse. The royal insignia. It wasn't from a public facility. It was from a royal laboratory. The color drained from his face. His stomach turned to ice. He picked up the paper, examining the watermark. It was real. It was official. The kind of test that could only be ordered from inside the monarchy, with special authorization. He whispered to himself, who did this? Someone at the palace had already known. Someone had already tested him, his blood, his children's, without his permission. His mind flooded with questions. Who ordered it? His father? William? One of the royal advisors? But one question screamed louder than the rest. When did they find out? He walked to the living room, pacing back and forth. His phone buzzed on the counter, a message from Meghan. Stop reading the gossip. None of it's true. He didn't reply. He couldn't. He wasn't reading gossip. He was holding government-certified proof. He poured a glass of water, but his hands shook so badly that half of it spilled onto the counter. Every image of his children flashed before his eyes. Archie's laugh, Lilibet's curls, the way he'd carried them on his shoulders in the backyard. How many of those moments were built on lies? He whispered, I love them. I love them no matter what. But the words felt hollow. Love couldn't erase the truth. And this truth was brutal. He collapsed into a chair and stared at the report again, his mind spiraling. The palace insignia burned like a brand in the corner. Whoever had commissioned this test hadn't done it out of curiosity. They'd done it to confirm suspicion. And the only person who'd ever voiced those suspicions directly was King Charles. He remembered a tense conversation months earlier, before everything fell apart. His father had looked at him across a long oak table and said quietly, Harry, are you certain everything in your household is as it seems? At the time, Harry had taken it as another jab at Meghan. Another veiled insult about her American independence, her control, her tendencies. He'd snapped back. But now, those words sounded different. Loaded. Calculated. Maybe Charles already